Mr President, it seems a bit trite to say that we're in unprecedented times, but we're certainly still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And although we've managed to slow the rate of infections and flatten the curve, so to speak, through the discipline and the diligence of the Australian community, the challenge for us now is how we will coexist in a world with COVID-19. One of the key challenges for us in this is in our schools. And as part of the government's announcement to gradually reopen schools, made on the 21st of April 2020, parents, students and teachers were promised additional hygiene measures. The Premier also said, and I quote, "We've also made sure that we have enough hand sanitisers, soap and all those things which make a school community feel safe, not just be safe. Schools will also have the capacity for temperature checks where they think it's appropriate." Well, Mr President, I can report to the House that as students and large numbers of students return to school this week, we have received reports across the school system of not enough resources, of schools only receiving soap in their packages, of teachers being forced to make their own hand sanitiser. Now, Mr President, this directly contradicts the Minister, who went further than the Premier to say hand sanitiser will be available in all classrooms. That's what the government's media release said. Now, I acknowledge we are in unprecedented times. I know that this is a use of government resources, and I do it carefully. But I do it because the government needs to be held to account, and it is important that there is parliamentary oversight during these uncertain times.
Order. Can I remind the Deputy President of his ruling not to interject, especially when he's not in the chamber?
Mr President, during these uncertain times, the anxiety of parents, students and teachers has been needlessly exacerbated by the constantly changing and sometimes conflicting advice from this government. Their initial response was poor. We knew that COVID-19, coronavirus as it was called then, was coming. Students who returned to Australia from China from the start of term 1 were required to self-isolate. When students in New South Wales schools started school at the start of term 1, students in Wuhan and in Hubei province were closed down. The schools were closed down. By the start of March, 22 countries had closed their schools. And despite the dropped media stories talking up the online learning arrangements, as parents across the state have discovered, there were no preparations for a seamless transition for our public school students. It was left up to individual teachers to learn how to navigate.
The Honourable Trevor Khan on a point of order.
Mr President, this is about whether there should be an SO52. And this discursive presentation has gone well beyond why an SO52, which I understand is probably going to be agreed to, should be put. I'd ask that you draw her back to actually what she's seeking in her notice of motion, rather than some generalised education whinge.
To the point of order, Mr President.
Yes, the Honourable Member on a point of order. No, you've only got 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Mr President, I am outlining the broader situation as to why we are calling on this call of government resources during this pandemic. I understand that it's unprecedented times, and I'm going to the broader reasons as to why we are taking these measures during this time.
Can I indicate? I've heard enough. Look, can I indicate to the Honourable Member you were starting to drift. You really were. You're going outside your own motion. You should focus on the motion, why you're seeking, and let's move on. You've only got 50 seconds left. I don't want to take any more of your time.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, let me just say this. Parents, students and teachers across the state have been left confused and anxious by the constantly changing and sometimes conflicting advice provided to them by their government. That is why...
Look, on the point of order, I mean, you need to link this in supplying the documents created since 1 March 2020 in the possession, custody and control relating to a list of all hygiene supplies, a list of New South Wales schools provided the forehead thermometers, any legal advice regarding scope or validity of the house. You're going outside that and you're going to run out of time.
Mr President, knowing that these supplies and what supplies have been provided to schools will go to allay the nervous...
The Minister.